We've been,
Yeah. So I went ahead and put the recording on. Oh, I got a message, I think. I did. I did. Oh, that's okay. She's not gonna come. She's at camp and she won't be able to make it. So we can get started. That's great. Okay. So welcome to Kristen because this is her first meeting and she's a new member, but I'm sure you guys have seen her posts in our little group. So thank you for coming and I can't wait to hear some of your thoughts. And then I wanted to wish Erin a happy birthday yesterday. She's a Gemini. We've been friends, we're friends for like how many years? 3 years now? 3 years. And I never knew that you were a Gemini, so that all makes a lot of sense now that we became really good friends. And happy Father's Day to anybody who celebrates, or moms out there that have to be a mom and dad, or to your grandpas, whatever. And then happy Pride to everybody who celebrated this weekend as well. Does anybody have any questions before we get started? No, we're good. Okay, okay. So this middle part, was full with all kinds of like meat, I think, of the book. And my first question, which we will start like we did last time, we'll start in the opposite alphabetical order. So that would be Stephanie. So we'll start with. My question is, as she continues on her journey, we learn about her like injuries, like her toenail fell off, and she's got welts and bruises and abrasions on her hips and shoulders. I felt like she was really vivid about it. And I was wondering, do you guys think there's some kind of symbolism to that? Like, does this physical pain and all these like welts and bruises and body changes, is that supposed to be a symbolism for like what's going on inside, like her grief, her pain, her transitioning? And then also a big part of it that I thought was unusual was like therapy. I've always talked about like my grief as like being like a monster or like this like big ball of darkness, and she calls her bag that she carries monsters. I was just wondering your guys' thoughts on like, do you think that there's a symbolism or correlation there? And if so, what did you think it was?
Sorry, I was trying to get unmuted. So I think there is symbolism there. I think it does. I think she's trying to get out how she's feeling internally. And I do think that is because, the body and the mind work together. And I think that's interesting how she's always bringing up her physical condition, but she starts to peel back layers of herself throughout this part of the book, so it's very interesting. And then what was the second question again? I'm sorry.
No, 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 you're really following along what I was kind of going. The bag, like this enormous bag that she has, and like all this junk that you find out is like extra. And the fact that it's so big that everybody who meets her calls, says how big it is, and then she calls it monster. Um, which just bags to be like her security, sort of, and like her thing that she survives off of. But that's not really a great connotation. So I was just kind of wondering, like, if you thought that was her way of like symbolizing something, or maybe like her own baggage.
That's honestly what I thought too, because she packs things that are very unnecessary. And was it Greg that was helping her unpack it and get it put back together, take out the unnecessary things? I can see a correlation that as she goes along farther on her journey, she's unpacking more stuff. So I think that's pretty interesting too.
How about you, Shannon? Did you notice anything like as I was reading? I was just like, this is weird. Like, I picked up on it. Did you?
yeah, so I was thinking about like the self, almost like a self-harm aspect. Like I know for myself, I used to do like I used to like going short hikes, but the more emotional I was, the more angry I was, the more, and it was like that. I played sports when I was younger. I was a gymnast, and I've always kind of been like that. I think that was one of my first methods of self-harm, was that the more emotions I was trying to shove down, the harder I would push myself, the more I would kind of beat myself up physically. And so I kind of wondered, like, if part of that, her being angry with herself, like, I deserve to carry this weight. That kind of feeling, like that putting yourself through pain because you feel like you deserve the pain, or you're gonna, if I'm in physical pain, I don't stop and think about the emotional pain I'm in. I also, when Stephanie was talking, and when you were talking about the backpack being the monster, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget that pain can become a method of survival. Going into survival mode, I know, like when I got clean, it was hard because I was way more comfortable in pain than I was with good things happening. I still to this day will say I know how to fail. I don't know how to succeed. So it's like success can be way more uncomfortable sometimes than failure because that's familiar. So,
That's really good insight. Yeah, you're right. They say that joy can be almost more uncomfortable than being sad. Like it's scary to be happy and things like that. I thought she was trying to do some type of atonement for the things that she'd done that she carried guilt for, like not being able to save her mom or cheating on her husband or the drugs that she did. Like maybe the weight of the bag was her way of like making penance in some way. I was wondering if maybe she thought that was, payback. How about you, Kristen? Did you have any correlation? I'm so sorry, you're muted. No
That would
worries.
help if I unmuted myself. What I was gonna say was, my mind kind of went in a different way. I was thinking about how, like, when you have like a bag, I did see like the bag with like of Monster, and that being just something that you kind of have to carry with you, but it also has like stuff she maybe didn't need as much in it, but also stuff that she really did need, and that's kind of how life is. You carry stuff with you that you don't necessarily need anymore, that doesn't serve you, but yet you still have to carry it with you because you may need it at some point. um, and so you still keep it because you don't want to like necessarily get rid of it, because what if you need, I don't know, this is me, I'm speaking for myself, what if I need it in the future type of thing. And it's just, but it also weighs you down, because if you lightened it, if you took out like the cigarette thing or whatever, if she took stuff out that she didn't really need, then the bag would have been lighter for her. And she's doing this whole trek, and she could have had things a little bit easier on herself if she didn't really carry as much stuff with her that she didn't need.
Yes,
The end.
that makes a lot of sense. I hoard organized hoard in my basement labeled tubs of things I may need in the future, because I'm afraid to let go of things. I just have a fear of it. That makes a lot of sense, especially with her
Well, and
insecurity.
I was going to say emotionally too, like not just like physical stuff, but I looked at that as like a symbolism for like emotionally how people, myself, like carry things that I don't necessarily need. And like I said, it just weighs you down. And then I guess when you really decide that you no longer need it, truly no longer need it, then you cast it aside. But I don't know, that process is long enough. So
It is. How about you, Jessica? I know you have a little bit more frustration, can see her a little differently in a different light. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Did you pick up on it?
So I feel like I had been kind of thinking of her backpack as kind of like her personal baggage full of her demons. And so I guess it's only fitting she calls it monster, like the monster under the bed sort of thing. Um, I do find that as she's going through her trek, that she's definitely maturing and working through some trauma, which is for me at least making her a lot more likable. Um, and I think it's so fitting that, you know, she's getting, first of all, she had to reach out to get help from someone to lighten her load, you know, to repack her backpack, which I thought was really fitting, like kind of a nice analogy between like how you do sometimes have to reach out to get that first bit of help. And, you know, it's just kind of progressively getting easier for her to shed things out of it and follow her own advice about like burning parts of the book as she finishes it, etc. So yeah, I think it's an interesting little analogy there between the backpack and her healing.
Kind of like your little bearded dragon. She's shedding so that she can grow, you know? How about you, Jameson? Did you notice that she was, you know, kind of caring too much, or that they had some kind of correlation to her inner turmoil?
I think I thought more about like as she talks about her injuries, because I know last week we were like, this is just another form of being destructive. And I think that I understand that so well. It's like the harder I push myself, the less I have to think about what's going on mentally. Like I can take care of the scrapes and I can take care of the bruises. And as long as I'm like putting one foot in front of the other, so to speak, or whatever I'm doing daily, it's like, let's just, you know, this is what we have to focus on right now. Um, and partly I think that's what she wanted. I think she knew when she was out there that the choices are put one foot in front of the other or stop, and like stopping really isn't an option. So you just like you only focus on what you have to focus on. But um I don't know, I guess because I know hikers, I just thought the pack was like her not knowing what she was doing. Like I didn't really think of it, how heavy it was, like because she's by herself, so it's gonna be heavy. But the definitely the injuries, I was like, yeah, I get this.
I related to that. When I go on a 2-day trip, I pack 3 suitcases. Like, I'm going to need all these shoes and all these clothes. I would have had that monster pack too, but is that me carrying too much? Like, I started to think about myself, like, maybe I am holding on to too much, you know, and maybe there is a healing process in letting go. However, the more little things I have to tend to, the more distracted I am, the less I have to focus on healing inside, you know? And I get it, the pain for me too. It's just another form of distraction, dissociation from what's like really happening in there. How about you, Aaron? What are your thoughts? We haven't really gotten a really good take on, so I'd like to start with that. Like, what was your first impression of Cheryl? How did you feel about her? And then go into how you feel about like the bag and the weight of it and all the injuries and all that good stuff.
Um, for me, my first impression with Cheryl is I thought she was really brave. I don't think that that's something that I could do. Um, my take on the story, though, or like my view of the story, is a lot different than you guys' because I've never really dealt with any sort of loss. Like honestly, not even one single member of my family who I was close with has passed away. Like my parents are young, my grandparents are young. So I've never dealt with anything like that before. I've never had any friends pass away, so I've never experienced that kind of like just snap, like someone's here and then they're gone, and how that changes the person. So I thought she was really brave to do that. I mean, I don't know how I would feel. Um, but I think that she is very self-destructive, like you guys mentioned last week and also this week. So I agree with you and what Jameson said. I think that like the bruises and the cuts and the missing toenails, she's just using that as another way to distract herself from her grief and her emotions. She even once said like she's surprised that she hasn't cried at all yet on her trip. She hasn't cried. So I don't think that she's letting herself process things yet. I do think though subconsciously she is working through her grief, and I think what I took from it is as she's subconsciously working her way through it, her pack is also getting lighter. So I do think that that was sort of an analogy for her grief at the beginning. So her grief is working itself out. Her pack is getting lighter. We haven't really seen a lot of proof of that, except for one big thing where she was at the campground, or no, she was at the bar, and the bartender was like, "Hey, come stay with me," and she was like, "I could," but she didn't. She was brave and she was strong, and she said no. But I also know that you guys mentioned last week, like you really hope that she would find somebody to connect with and realize that you don't have to do everything on your own. That it's okay to rely on your support system for help when you need it. And I thought she found that with those two girls. I thought like, wow, she's finding the support system now. She's going to do really great. But then even then, she let them go ahead. She stayed a whole extra day just because I know she said she wanted to heal her toes a little bit, but also because she wanted to be alone. So I don't know. That's my take so far.
Really good insight. And you've been so blessed, so fortunate to not have lost anyone. That is miraculous and wonderful. I can't even imagine what that would feel like. I forget the days before that. But that's I commend you for like being able to be empathetic, and not have feeling that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then we'll start back with you again, and then we'll just go back in alphabetical order. Um, Kind of a segue to what you were saying is I wanted to hear what your guys' thoughts were on her interactions with people that we've like actually get to see her these people that she doesn't know. Also wanted to think about like the phone call to Paul, her ex husband, and then what your feelings are with how she is associating herself to all these different people. Is there anyone that you liked in particular? Anybody that you feel like was super impactful to her journey or her as a person or her growth? Or anything that really set out to you? And then I don't know why, but it got under my skin that she called her ex and talks to him for on the phone. So that was something that really stood out to me. So I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on it. And you can go ahead, Aaron.
Um, I mean, I feel like a lot of people gave her really great advice. What I thought was a little bit strange, but I've never been in this situation where I don't see people for days on end. But she was just so like um, open and welcoming and trusting with everybody that she met. I feel like me personally, I mean, besides what was it when the car came up, and I feel like that's the only time where she was a little bit hesitant. But I don't know. That's at least what I picked up on. But it seemed like every other time she was so open with every single person. She even said like, felt like I knew this person, even though we had just met. But also, she's been seeing, didn't she say like she saw their names in the registries? And she hasn't seen anybody else for days and days. So she is craving that human connection. She did say that. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I really, really wanted her to connect with the girls and I wanted her to stay with them. And she didn't. So I guess we'll see. I just think that she needs to realize that it is okay to ask for help sometimes.
There were some things that I did write down here that I thought were interesting. So, like you said, the man that pulls up with the peas bumper sticker. So, but at first she feels like a little bit threatened about like maybe being sexually exploited in some way. She also feels that way about the people and that pick her up in the car. It seems like she on one side she talks about how she can have sex like a man, you know. I'm gonna put quotes around that because I like to let her psychologist ask her to define that for me. She said she can have it emotionless, however, which would make me think she's promiscuous. But on the other hand, these men that she encounters, sometimes she's threatened by them. So that was something also that I thought was interesting and wanted to hear your guys' thoughts. So I believe we would go to Jameson.
I'm trying to think of what to answer first. There was a point that she was talking about the people that she pretended to be and how none of it ever led to who she really was. And that she realized that, like, she said, I'm going to dinner with all of these men, and the only thing I have to wear is what I'm wearing. And I was like, well, yeah, because you didn't pack for vacation, but like, I liked how it, like, she talked about all these things she did to pretend to be somebody that she really wasn't. And I get that. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm borderline and we don't really have a good grasp of who that person is at the center of us. Like, well, I'm just going to try this and I'm going to try this and I'm going to try this. And I think, you know, being out there and stripping all of that away, like maybe you do find who you are. Um, Maybe you don't. Maybe it's just more self-destruction, but it seemed like it helped her, like, well, this is it. This is who I am. Um, and also I think that there's a difference between you having control over a situation and you not having control over a situation. Like I can see being like, okay, like I don't know what this guy is going to do once I get in this car, but I'm hiking and this is what the hikers do, so I don't really have control over this. um which, you know, just that's just, to me, that's just more like this is not a really safe behavior, because usually you're not doing that alone. Usually there's a group of you or you're hiking together. And she's just like, well, okay, here we go. um I don't know that I was irritated that she called her ex. Like I think I get it. I don't know if it's like just wanting to hear somebody's voice or like wanting somebody to know, like, hey, I'm still doing the thing. I'm still alive. I haven't been eaten by a bear or killed by a rattlesnake. But I don't know. That didn't bother me. I think probably because I'm a romantic and like in the back of my head, I'm like, she's still in love with him. Like, but I don't know. Like she just wanted him to know, like, I'm okay. I don't know.
That's a very sweet perspective and totally different from where I was going with it. But I think it hit a piece in me, or maybe like a healed piece in me, where I would choose what were safe people, you know, so they look really good on paper. And this is what like Paul seems to be for her. And but she doesn't want to be with him. She keeps pushing him away and doesn't, and she leaves him and cheats on him and everything. And it's just like I felt like she was leading him on and using him for that security that she's been using him for all along, like that band-aid, that patch of security. That's where I went with it. But I like your thought of maybe she really is still in love with him. Maybe she self-sabotaged that relationship to hurt herself. Maybe there is still love there. For me,
I
it
don't
felt more like a relief, like a way to make herself feel better, and then he gets hurt. You know what I mean?
That's what I was gonna say. I don't know if I really meant in love. I think that it's like he's her comfort person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think even if they never, like, I don't think they're ever gonna get back together, but like that's your comfort person. Like when I need to talk to somebody, that's the person I'm gonna, maybe that's maybe
He was
that's what
also
I'm,
happy to hear from her. So
yeah.
that's also a thing. So yeah, I was just really intrigued what you guys thought, or if it was just me being disturbed by it. How about you, Jessica?
Um, as far as like her calling Paul, it didn't bother me, and I think I just get the impression that like outside of them having been married and are now divorced, like they're good friends. And she'd already talked to Lisa and she's just happy to talk to somebody other than Lisa. And then I think also too, like as far as like your other question, as far as like who helped her the most or has had the most influence, I think a lot of people have been helpful to her. I mean, like helping her repack her pack, showing how to use the ice axe. But I think cumulatively, all of these wholesome, non sexual interactions with men that are positive are doing a world of good for her and getting her to a place where she can call and have like a normal conversation with Paul and tell him about her day, you know, about her trip, etc. And so I feel like that's been like the huge thing is like her running across the women was great for camaraderie, but she needs these interactions with men that have nothing to do with jumping into bed or doing heroin or whatever. It's just we're getting through this hike together, and we're going to support each other however.
That also is a really good way of looking at it. Like maybe she was able to communicate with him in that way because she's had these interactions with these other people. I think it was interesting too that she had a lot of the people that she got in contact with were safe men. Even though she had some apprehension about them, I think it has a lot to do with the men in her life being toxic besides Paul, like with her dad, biological father and stuff like that. And then, Joe, the one that she used drugs with, was interesting. Really good point. Really good point. How about you, Kristen? And I saw Pete's little face.
Yeah, he had to come and bug me. I was gonna say that as far as like the easiness of her interacting with like people, I just think that it's like the mindset of when you are amongst people that do similar things to you, you have a camaraderie even if you don't know them. And I just equated it when I read that to like when I go skydiving. The first couple of times, maybe not, and I'm a little bit more reserved around them. But the more times I go skydiving, I don't know these people. I just come into contact with them that day, that time. But we're going through, it's not trauma. We're going through a big experience in a plane together, going up into the sky, jumping out. And so you fist bump and you say hi to each other and you talk about stuff and you support each other and you wish each other well. And if I needed something, they would give me, and if I had something, I'd give them something. That's just kind of what you do. And so I kind of looked at it like that. And you don't, I mean, maybe it's a little bit sometimes superficial. You may not get like super deep with them, of course, but you're still going to be there during that experience and offer whatever support you can during that experience. And then as for like her conversation with Paul and stuff, I didn't have any thoughts about her talking with him, but what I thought about was that moment when I've had this experience myself in my life where she talked to him and she realized like, I miss him, but I don't want to go back. So you think about the things that are good, the things that you want, the things that are comforting, the things that, maybe under the right circumstances, you would be back there, but at the same time, you're not willing to give up the place where you're at now and the path that you're going. So that's really what more the insight I think she had, like even when she had said, about what was it? Her thinking about all the things that she had done wrong, but knowing that like in that moment, this was what she's done right. Like this is all about what she's done right was just being here. And so I think she probably had to have conversations with Paul in order to even have that insight. Like you don't know that you don't want to go back and that you still miss something unless you already have those conversations. Otherwise, it becomes a fantasy in your head.
That's funny you bring that up. That was one of my favorite quotes in the book. Like she did all these horrible things, but then it led her to the right place. Like Erin was saying, I'm wondering, because these interactions that you have with these people are sort of superficial, but also bonding, like you said in your skydiving experience, like that's a huge monumental, life-changing experience. So the people that you do it with, whether it's an instructor, people, other, peers, it's gonna be bonding. So I get that. Do you guys think she has intimacy problems? Is that something that you think like she doesn't like let anybody in deep? Or do you think that she's getting better with it as she goes along? You know what I mean? Like you think that that might be something that's in the future for her. I'm not 100% sure yet. What do you think, Shannon?
I think it's interesting watching her learn to interact with people on a healthy way. I think that each interaction she has is a little bit more healthy than the last. She's thinking about different things as she interacts with them. I find it funny that every guy that she's came across on the trail, she thinks about the condoms. She's like, who took the condoms? I need to know who has them. But then she starts talking to them, and by the time they're done talking, it's about what they did, what they gave her advice wise, or their story. It's less and less about the sexual as she gets to know their stories and has that camaraderie with them. I find it interesting the way she's learning to interact. As far as her interacting with Paul, her calling Paul, I kind of agree with what others have said. I think she's reaching out to the comfortable. She's in a uncomfortable place, and she's like, Paul is comfortable. He's someone I know, but he's also not here with me. So I can call and have this limited interaction on the phone, and I can talk about what I need to say, and I can end it anytime it becomes uncomfortable. All I have to do is hang up the phone when I'm done. And he goes away until she's ready to call him again. He's someone that has no way to get in contact with her. Everything is in her hands right now, what she wants to do with it. And I'm trying to remember, I don't have my book in front of me. Funny story, I actually took it to read during my lunch break at work on Monday and forgot it in my desk at work. So I had to hurry up and jump on Libby and find a copy to finish reading for this week. But so I'm trying to remember without it in front of me, if she was it a postcard that she sent to Joe. Okay, I knew there was some kind of, she either reached out to Joe or she wanted to, and she was wanting to know if he had been successful, if he was getting clean. And I'm kind of waiting to see where that goes. If I'm kind of hoping that with her gone, he has his own journey. That's probably part of my previous life coming back to haunt me, but I'm kind of rooting for them to both of their journeys lead them back to the same, like lead them back to a healthier place together. It doesn't always happen that way, but I know couples that it's happened that way. So I really want to see him turn around while she's turning around so they can be a better person for each other.
You're right. She did. She sent him a postcard or a letter, or vice versa. And he had made a promise to her that he would work on getting clean. Um, I really hope so, because it's such a dangerous drug that they were dabbling in. I worry about Joe. How about you, Stephanie? Did you have any thoughts on her intimacy issues? Anybody that you felt like she's super connected with? One of the ones I was thinking about was, I believe it's Greg. Like, if you remember back to the very beginning, she was in the hotel and she said, I could just go out and find a man right now. Bring him back here, it'd be so easy. And then he's in the other room after dinner and she hears his bed squeaking and she's like, I'm so lonely. I could literally scream out in pain from the loneliness. It's like that stuff that she felt at the very beginning, that aching, that loneliness is still there. So I was just wondering if you think that she's filling that hole that she has, or if it's getting bigger. What's your impression?
So I'm proud of her that she has not taken a guy to bed, because obviously she uses sex as a comfort for her, and that's how she realizes that she can show her emotions, and she needs to get out of that. But I'm with Shannon, or well, a bunch of people. You guys were saying how she is having wholesome interaction with males, and that's really what she needs, because she has a lot of traumas with guys. I'm interested to see what actually happened to her to bring her to that aspect, unless it has to do fully with the fact of the issues with her father. And I agree. I think she is getting better as she goes on with her interactions with guys. I think she's learning to trust them. I think she really does have intimacy issues because she's been hurt so much. But I'm just interested in that story. And like like Shannon, I really hope that her and Joe will come together. I think there's something there. But yeah, they both need to stay away from the drugs, because she brought up a few weeks before she even went on the trail that she had injected heroin in between her toe and she still had the bruises. And the phone call with Paul, that didn't really bother me, because I put myself in that, I try to put myself in that situation. And if I had gotten a divorce from my husband, I think I would still use him as safety too. just to have somebody there. But maybe she does have feelings for him, but she's just too scared to admit it because she's pushing everything away and everybody away because that's what she thinks she deserves.
I was really thinking about some of the things that she is a writer and she knew she was going to journal this adventure, or decided to. Um, Things that I think really stick out for me is her symbolism with words. So she chooses the last name Strayed. That's not her real last name. She chose that last name because she sees herself as a stray. So that right there just screams to me that she has some type of belonging issue. You know what I mean? I relate to that. I'm an orphan and I push everyone away. I keep everybody out here. So I immediately related to that. So it stuck out to me. Um, the two last questions, we can stack them together. I want to know what your guys' favorite quotes are, or if you have, if you didn't find one that really stood out to you, if you had a question, or if you have a question for Cheryl, if you could ask her anything right now at this moment, what would it be? And then the other part is she repeats these like mantras to herself all the time. Like she's safe, or she's not scared. She keeps telling herself that she's not afraid, even though she's terrified. Do you believe that sort of self-talk works? Have you ever had experience with it working? Like one of the things that my therapist has me do is say these little phrases. And one of them is I approve of myself. I have to say it every day in the mirror, right? I do not approve of myself. I've been doing this for a year. I'm just curious everybody else's take on it. Like, do you think that her little self-talk and mantras is impactful? And then like what your favorite quotes were and all the little symbolisms and things. So we'll start with Erin. It doesn't say you're muted, but I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear her? Okay, we will. Sure. So the next person would be JK. Kristen. Kristen, go ahead.
Sorry, I had to move her chat out of the way so I could get to my unmute button. I would say my favorite quote. Let me find it. Okay, it says, I think it was, like I was still the woman with the hole in her heart, but the hole had gotten ever so infinitesimally smaller. And I think that just ties into like her really feeling that she is right where she needs to be, even though she still has, like, you can hold two things to be true at the same time. You can miss what you had, but you can also be grateful for where you're at right now and the process that you're in.
Do you do any type of self-talk or mantras or anything like any kind of meditative? No.
I do meditative stuff, but like it's more parts work. It's more like inner family systems work. So it's more talking to myself, not necessarily like, because I view like lots of times mantras as it's like fake it till you make it, and I don't really buy into that as much as like some people do. And so I think it's more like talking to my system and having conversations with my system to get us to a point where we can feel comfortable moving on to what we need to move on to. And I think under the situation that the stress that she's under, and like just her own like internal turmoil, but let alone the fact that she's like in the wilderness, like that's just a hard thing to do. I've had people that have tried to attempt to do that. I know people, and they don't make it. Like they end up quitting because it's so hard. And so I just think that sometimes when you're in a surviving type of situation, you have to tell yourself whatever you need to tell yourself to get through. And even if you don't believe it, even if it's not true, even if it's whatever, you just tell yourself what you need to tell yourself so that you will get to the next step. And eventually, I guess maybe that is a little bit of fake it till you make it, but I just think it's really just surviving. And eventually at the end you hope that the work will pay off. And it looks like it is for her so far. Like, even if it's small and it's maybe not as fast as it's maybe drastic.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people do healing work and they don't necessarily have to go to the Pacific Crest Trail to heal themselves, but so maybe a little bit drastic, but that's all.
That's interesting. You say my system, and you also refer to we. Do you work on the internal family system? Do you work in that kind of therapy genre, or are you introspective? That I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's all parts work.
Yeah, parts work. Yeah, me too. Okay, that's awesome. How about you, Jameson? Do you have a favorite quote? Do you have a question you'd ask her or anything like that?
I think what I would ask her, like I didn't find a lot of quotes this time that really resonated with me, except that first one that I mentioned. But I think I just want her to tell me, like, what are you gonna do when you go back? Like, what are you gonna do when you don't have this place to run to? Like, is there gonna be a next place to run to? Like, I feel like that's a thing that you should start figuring out before you're done with this, because when you get back and you don't know what your next move is, you're just going to go right back to what you were doing before. But I don't necessarily repeat mantras, but like when I'm working out, I'll have something in my head like, okay, you can do this for 2 minutes. Like you can do anything for 2 minutes. Just keep going. Just keep going. And I will do things like that. I've probably used more lipstick on my mirrors than I ever have on my face, because I write things on my mirrors like, this is your goal for this week. Like this is what we're gonna do. So I get it. I get like repeating something to keep you moving, to keep you motivated, to keep you focused. So I kind of like that about her, but
that's so fascinating that you said that. So that when we came to you, I was so wondering if you would pick this because it stood out to me because we both love crows and ravens and like dark night birds. And my favorite quote is when she's in the bathroom at the rest stop, and she said, this girl, this like hippie girl, asked her, where did you get your feather? And she says, a friend gave it to her, and then the lady says, it's got to be corvid. She said, reaching over to touch it delicately with one finger. It's either a raven or a crow, a symbol of the void, she added in a mystical tone. The void, I asked, crestfallen. She said, no, no, it's a good thing. It's the place where things are born, where they begin. Think about how a black hole absorbs energy and then it releases it as something new and alive. I thought that was really cool because we both relate to those birds so much, and we're always both going through some type of rebirth. Like we're always on our next like challenge or something. So I was wondering if that stood out to you at all.
it did. It kind of reminded me of I do love my corvids, all of them. I try to lure the blue jays into, but it reminded me of like the death card, like people that when like you're doing a tarot reading and people assume that it's dark, it's negative, and it's like no, it's rebirth, it's destruction, so something new can happen. And I think that's what made me think of, okay, where are you going to go from here? So,
Yeah, I would already be thinking about my next move too. How about you,
yeah.
Jessica?
Um, so like as far as like mantras, um, I find for me they're great for physical stuff. Like or even things like handling fear, like just like the entire internal dialogue doesn't even necessarily have to be repetitive. For years, I handled chronic pain by getting up every single morning, looking at myself in the mirror and saying, your pain doesn't own you. And that's because I spent like 5 years trying every painkiller known to man, and it wasn't working for me. Um, so I can see how that's like kind of keeping her going and motivating. This section that, like, maybe not really a quote, but like a little scene that kind of stood out to me is where she's talking to her therapist, and she said, is saying, I mean, imagine my life if I'd been raised by my father. And our therapist says, imagine your life if you had a father who loved you as a father should. And I was like, because then she goes on to say, like, she can't even imagine that. She can't even imagine what that would look like, how that would break down into a list. Like, that's just an unfathomable thing to her. And I get that. I mean, first of all, how do you know what something would look like if you didn't have that? And second of all, I mean, aren't we all a little bit broken by some relationship at its core, whether it be with our parents or, a really critical, love relationship, etc. So that's how I think about that.
That really resonates with me too. When I thought about that, I thought, well, that would be something that she wouldn't even consider because that's not even in her wheelhouse. You guys know I love pop culture and I love quotes. I wouldn't ask you what your favorite ones, but there's one from As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt. And they're in the car, and there's this amazing actor, and he plays a gay guy in it. He's so funny. He has problems with his family, and Jack Nicholson has OCD, and she has issues too with her son. Anyway, and he's like, everybody has wonderful stories about noodle salad and picnics and sunshine. Just nobody in this effing card. Like, I always relate to that. Like, I don't have those stories. My life doesn't consist of that. Erin, on the other hand, has picnic and sunshine. And, it's like, now there's nothing bad's ever happened to her, but like it's really cool to see the juxtaposition between the two. Like, I would never think, Erin probably would think of like what it would be like to have your whole family, but I would never even enter my mind. So that's a really interesting take on it. How about you, Shannon? What's your favorite quote? Do you have a question for her, or do you have any mantras? I don't know what your steps were for sobriety, but I do know in AA they do a lot of the same, things over and
Right.
over.
Few different things there. So I don't think I really had a favorite quote from this time. Like I said, I don't have my book in front of me to flip back, but the trying to remember all the questions. As far as like mantras and stuff, it was funny. I found it interesting that Jessica was talking about using mantras and stuff for the physical being an easy thing to do. That's actually one of my biggest struggles. So we did, as part of recovery, I did the same thing that you do, Billy. I was told to do, look at myself in the mirror and tell myself all these great things about myself every day. We came up with a whole list, and it was one of those things that I just kind of BS'd my way through therapy on. I was like, yeah, I did it, knowing darn well that I might have looked beside the mirror or above the mirror, or skipped it altogether. But when I started the program that I just graduated through our church, the education program, one of the first lessons they put this big mirror in our sanctuary, and we had to stand in front of it, and we had to say something that we liked about ourselves. And then everyone in our class went around for each person and said something they saw in that person. And I didn't even get to that part. Like, I stepped in front of the mirror when it was my turn. I was the last one to go because I put it off to the last minute. And I was hoping they would forget about me. And when I finally had to stand in front of that mirror, they're like, you need to look in the mirror. And I looked in the mirror and I just broke down. I was like a big ooey gooey crying, snotty pile of emotion on the floor. And I'm not a person who's comfortable with emotion. So, I mean, it was a mess. They had to clear out the room. I never did finish the exercise. Instead, like our teachers, our instructors went through and they said what they saw in me, and we did it in a private setting because it just broke me. And I realized that like there are some days that are really good and I can look in the mirror and I'm like, oh yeah, I look fantastic. I like this about myself and this about myself. But there are other days it can take one wrong look or one little innocent comment from the wrong person, and I won't look in that mirror for weeks. And so for me, the mantras that I find easier are like, I've been focusing a lot on learning about my identity, who I am. And so because when I came into this program, I didn't know, my identity was my kid's mom, my wife's spouse. My identity was what I did for a living, what my job was, and I didn't know who I was. I had no clue. So it's like I've now my mantra, I have to remind myself who I am. And I can do character traits all day, every day. I can remind myself that I'm strong and I'm independent and I'm a survivor and I've done this. I can do all these things because I've done them before. I've been through worse, so I can do this. But to stand in front of a mirror and say something good about myself, I'm like, nope, it's not happening. So, I do like the way I admire the way she keeps with her mantras and she keeps reminding herself of who she is and what she's done and what she can do. But I'd be kind of curious to see her in front of an actual mirror.
It's really, really hard. So the mirror thing is painful for me too. Real painful. Very vulnerable. It hurts. I look myself in the eye and I say what she wants me to say, and I don't believe it, but I keep saying it, and I hope that I will believe it someday. So she works in internal family systems and trauma and BPD and complex PTSD. And the biggest part of it that I've noticed with her is that she feels like that all energy that is released comes back. If you can release that good stuff out, there's a chance that energy can come back on you. So even if you have to describe yourself in those ways that I'm strong, maybe the more that you do that, the more that strength will come back and you'll be able to go on to the next step of something that you actually like. Start really, really small. Like I have yellow flakes in my eyes, like little tiny yellow flecks, and that was where I started. So it can be really little. How about you, Stephanie? Do you have any questions for her? A favorite quote? Um, and like, do you feel like she's making any kind of evolution with the grief and the loss of her mom? Because I know that's the biggest part that's been standing out to you.
So my favorite quote is, I didn't feel sad or happy. I didn't feel proud or ashamed. I only felt that in spite of all of the things I'd done wrong and getting myself here, I'd done right. And I really love that because just kind of like the whole, how everybody's saying the mantra thing. I have a lot dealing with the grief, and I don't like myself at all. I have very bad insecurities and self-esteem, and I have to, when I'm having a panic attack while I'm driving, I have to tell myself, you're going to be okay. It's just a panic attack. You're going to get through this. I have to talk to myself at work to kind of coach myself through everything because I think it's the grief manifesting itself, and I really need to. I mean, it's been almost 2 years, so it'll be 2 years on the 24th that my mom has been gone, and that's really hard for me because I haven't dealt with it fully yet. Sorry, I'm crying. um, it's just really hard, and she was my best friend. So I have to keep telling myself, that she wants me to be happy and okay. So
Thank you for being so vulnerable. I think Cheryl felt the same way. That was her mom. That was her best friend too. She was her mom's caretaker. That was her whole world. So I was just wondering how you felt. So thank you so much for sharing about that. It's been 8 years for me with my mom, and we weren't best friends in the way that you and your mom were. And I envied you because you got to help take care of her. But I do think letting some of that out may help heal you physically as well as emotionally. And then Shannon, I wanted to tell you before I ask Erin if she can get her audio before we close up. I had a really hard time, and I think Jameson will relate to this too. I have a lot of body dysmorphia. So the way I've lost and gained weight so much in my life, that sometimes I think I'm bigger than I am, and sometimes I think I'm smaller than I am. And the image in the mirror is so hard for me sometimes. It's almost disorienting, like, who is that? So the thing that we did was, and I think Kristen might even relate too. Instead of having my mirror face the mirror side, I flipped it around. And what I did is I made a collage of words that describe me and my soul. So what my soul looks like. So if I ever want to turn it around just to check my outfit, I can. But if I ever want to check my image, I have my little vision board of what my soul looks like so that I won't have that. Just so when it turns around, I know who I am inside, not what I am in the mirror. That could be a fun project for you to work on. It's really neat. So, I think that would be good for you. Not even worry about
I,
the image.
I actually love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. How about you, Erin? Did you get your audio?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was just my headphone died, that's all. But Jody still had to help me because, you know. Anyway, so here's the quote that resonated most with me this week. Because like I said, I haven't really dealt with like a lot of grief like you guys have. Or it seems like most of you have. Thank you. Thank you. But I have, and I know I mentioned something on Facebook, struggled with my faith a little bit, you know, and I do believe in God, but it has faltered before. Um, I grew up in a really religious family, and I'm not saying if anyone sees this, I'm not saying I was taught this way. I'm just saying that like my mind as a child, like an early adult, understood it this way, and I'm kind of working on my relationship with God because when I was younger, I understood that I was going to be punished. You know, that God was going to punish me for bad things. And when bad things happened to me, it was because I was being punished for something. So um, that's just something that I'm working on now and realizing that God loves me no matter what. But anyway, so Cheryl's quote about faith is what stood out to me most. Sorry, I think I'm gonna cry in every book I read. I don't know why, but I will. Anyway, so this is the quote that I found this week. She says, I was as searching as I was skeptical. I didn't know where to put my faith, or if there was a place, or even precisely what the word faith meant. In all of us is complexity. Everything seemed to be possible. Everything seemed to be possibly potent, possibly fake, and then you are a seeker. But I guess that's kind of like how I'm coming to terms with it. I guess, you know, I'm working on my relationship with God. I know that God isn't punishing me when something bad happens. It's not because I'm being punished because I'm a bad person. God loves me no matter what. So the grief isn't what I'm resonating with the most. Is like um, her faith faltering and her trying to find it as well as work her way through grief. So that's what I took from it the most so far.
I love that. And thank you for sharing. That's a really, really complicated. I think everybody goes through different phases of what they believe is a higher being or not a higher being, or what's there and what's not there. And grief just makes all of it even harder.
Yeah.
And I know that she struggles with that. Yeah, I'm glad it touched you in some way. I just wanted to wrap up with everyone and let you know that next week will be our last week of Wild. So whoever wants to continue, if if Jameson would like to go on to the next book, they get to choose it. Or if we want to take a poll on who wants to go and choose the book, we can do that as well. So that would be something that we'll be discussing next week. And then we'll read until the end of the book. And then if there's anything that you guys would like to do celebratory wise to finish the book, you can put your thoughts in our cozy corner, little book club. Like last time we did like a little pizza thing. Maybe this time we can do something. I don't know, maybe something wild. We'll have to think. I'll have to think. We'll do something. Is there any questions or thoughts or anything that we left out that anybody would like to discuss? No? Okay. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful week and happy reading, and I'll see you next Sunday.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
I